Hi, this is Sophie. If you would like to know the exact type and brands of face painting brushes that I use, I recommend you watch the first episode of this video series. There is a link to that video appearing on the screen for you right now. But today I would like to talk to you more specifically about the most important and versatile brush in face painting, the round brush, and show you the great variety of brush strokes you can do with it. To wet the brush, I dip it into the glass and then I tap the excess water. I then lay the brush on top of the face paint and do small pulling motions while at the same time twisting the brush between my fingers so that the face paint is loading the brush on all sides. I continue doing this until the face paint turns into the consistency of a heavy cream, and I also want to make sure that I load the brush or the bristles all the way to the metallic piece. I then lay the brush flat onto a drier area of the face paint and I turn the brush between my fingers while at the same time pulling it out of the face paint container. This will twist the bristles together into a very fine tip. As I mentioned in a previous video, round brushes are the most important in face painting because, as you will see, they will help you do a lot of things. I am first showing you the round brushes with a pointy tip. And here are three different sizes, a number 4, a number 3, and a number 2. I personally use the number 3 the most, and this is the one I will use today to demonstrate most of the brush strokes. I hold my brush just like a pencil, fairly close to the ferrule for better control. While I paint, I try to always keep my hand and my wrist flexible so that I achieve more flowing lines. When I need to paint very fine details or my hand is a bit shaky, I lay my pinky finger down, which gives me a lot more stability. What's so great about this brush is that if you use only the very tip, you can draw a thin line. But if you lay the bristles all the way down, you will be able to draw a thick line. In face and body painting, the most pleasing brush strokes are achieved by alternating between thin and thick lines. The more pressure you will apply on the bristles, the thicker your line will be. Try to practice this: a thin line turning into a thick line, and a thick one becoming thin. A very important brush stroke to practice is from thin to thick to thin. Try to practice this as often and as much as you can, and always think pressure, release, pressure, release. Try to keep a flowing motion. This is the movement your hand should make: up, down, and back up. If your hand is not in motion before it touches the skin and after it leaves it, then both ends of your brush strokes will not be very thin. Think of an airplane preparing to land, touching down softly, flat on the ground, and lifting up again. With this technique, you will draw lines that are beginning and ending very thin. This type of line is often curved and can be drawn in different sizes. This is the typical tiger stripe. Try to practice this on both sides and to change the angle of the curve. If you wiggle your hand in the middle section, you can give your line an interesting texture. This is, for example, something you could use to draw the outline of a butterfly wing. For outlining, I always use the smallest round brush that I have, which in my case is number 2. And I try to use the technique that I just showed you and vary the thickness of my lines to give the design more depth and interest. To make a teardrop, you can either start flat, then release the pressure and flick the brush out, or start thin and slowly bring your brush down. It's always a good idea to practice different sizes of teardrops using the same brush or a bigger one. Teardrops look really great in a group of 3, the bigger one being in the middle. They are all pointing towards the same direction. This is the focal point. You can add more teardrops on each side all the way to the horizontal line. Just make sure they are decreasing in size and directing towards the focal point. This is often positioned between the eyes. For a pleasing effect, make sure that both sides are symmetrical and follow this shape as much as possible. To paint a curved teardrop, always keep in mind the direction you want to go towards. Put your brush down, curve the line, and flick it out. They are also often in groups of 3, always directed towards an imaginary focal point. A group of curved teardrops look really good at the corner of each eye. Just think of your focal point, which is right here. The longest one is at the very top, and the other ones follow in decreasing order, following approximately this shape. The best effect is achieved when they are close together and the space in between each is always about the same size. This is the negative space, which in this case is about this big. Swirls are made by drawing a thin to thick to thin line that I showed you earlier, but with the added challenge of a curve. Start thin, then put the bristles down while at the same time curving the line, and then lift your hand up for a thin ending. And don't forget to practice on both sides. If, like me, you're having some problems with your swirls, this trick might help you. Start by drawing a curved teardrop, then start again from the thicker end and finish up your spiral. Swirls are often positioned at the external corner of the eye in groups of 2 swirls connected to one another. The second swirl is usually smaller than the first one and is drawn in the opposite direction. They look really good on top of the eye, as I just showed you, or below the eye over the cheek area. Starbursts can really enhance a girly design by giving a really cool illusion of sparkle. To make a simple starburst, you can start with a dot if that helps you. Then flick your brush in all 4 directions, keeping your lines very thin, always starting back at the middle. A double starburst is basically a simple starburst with 4 additional lines, much smaller than the other 4. Most things look good in groups of 3, and so do starbursts, and in this case it's okay if they slightly overlap. Just try to make sure that all horizontal lines and all vertical lines are fairly parallel to one another. Now let's try to use the round brushes with a rounded tip. Just so that you can compare, this was the round brush with a pointy tip. Round brushes with a round tip don't make any good swirls or teardrops, but you can use them to make other nice things. Let me show you. Because of their rounded tip, they make really great dots. Hold your brush very straight over the skin at an almost 90-degree angle and press. The harder you will press, the bigger the dot will be. Dots look great in groups or clusters, for example on butterfly wings or around flowers. They also look good in rows in decreasing sizes. In case you are not familiar with this technique, watch closely. This brings the wow effect every time. Make sure your brush is very well loaded with lots of creamy paint on all sides all the way to the ferrule. But be careful, it shouldn't be too wet or dripping. I find it best to start with white. The secondary color is up to you, but make sure you choose a fairly dark color which is highly pigmented. The surface of the secondary color is not wetted. Now rub only the very tip of the brush in a pulling and circular motion over the surface of the secondary color, in my case blue. And continue doing this until the blue is visible at the tip of your brush. If you notice that it's not really happening because both colors are getting mixed, then place the tip of your brush on a different spot and continue rubbing until the secondary color is quite visible at the tip. Just like for dots, place your brush very straight at a 90-degree angle over the skin and press down, then lift back up fairly quickly. This makes really adorable little flowers with 5 petals. Make sure you leave a little space in the middle to add a dot later on. The harder you press down, the longer the shape will be. Feel free to experiment with different colors and different sizes and you will see it's a lot of fun making those. Here's something you might want to try out. Once you've loaded your brush with your first color, rub it on a dry kitchen towel to wipe out some of the paint at the very tip. It will then be easier to pick up your second color and faster to clean the surface of your face paint afterwards. As you can see, this brings actually exactly the same result. I initially wanted to make a video to talk about all the important face painting brushes, but it was just getting too long, so I made another one where you can see the other great face painting brushes and how I store them, how I clean them, and of course the kind of brush strokes you can make with them. So if you want to watch it, just click on the link. Now I would like to thank you very much for watching my videos, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye!